Welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. Today, after the old day job, I am off to check out the new comedy, Spinal Tap II, The End Continues. Spinal Tap II, The End Continues is directed by Rob Reiner, and it's starring Christopher Guest, Michael McCain, and Harry Shearer. This tells the ongoing story of the band Spinal Tap. Now, some of you might know that 41 years ago, a little movie was released, a mockumentary that will change the face of comedy forever. Or, well, it changed the face of comedy for me. I always loved this movie. I saw this movie when I was a kid, and I absolutely loved it. This was one of those films that I always felt was my first adult comedy. Like, I got the adult jokes. I think I was around 11 or something like that. I found it at a video store, begged my dad to pick it up, and so he did, and we both sat there and laughed. Me more than my dad. There were some moments that he chuckled a little bit, but I was cackling like crazy watching this movie for the first time. I swear to God, when they dropped down Stonehenge and those leprechauns came out and started dancing around, I'm pretty sure I laughed so hard I started crying. Now, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily have the emotional response to this movie, but I am really looking forward to it. I don't really have a lot of expectations going into this because talk about a movie that I never thought I would see a sequel for, but hey, you know what? Here we are, so I'm going into this with just high hopes and zero expectations. So anyways, guys, it's enough of me sitting here jibber-jabbering on because I gotta get to the old day job, and then I'm off to check out Spinal Tap II, The End Continues. Welcome back, just getting home from Spinal Tap. The End Continues. And guys, I thought it was alright. It was a perfectly acceptable comedy, but it does not hold a candle to the original. Let me put this in music analogy form for you, okay? Let's say that you've been a fan of a band for 30 plus years, okay? You love this band. Somewhere in their career, something happens and the band breaks up. They haven't been talking to each other for a very long time. Think of something like Jane's Addiction. And then they decide, you know what? Let's get back together again. Let's go back out on tour. And you know what? Let's put out a new album of all original songs. And so you find out about this and you're like, oh my God, yes, let's do this. Let's do this. A new album on tour. Let's go. And then you run out to the store or you download it off Spotify. Is kind of how it goes today. And you get a hold of that new album. You listen to it and you're like, yeah, okay, this is good enough. Not as good as the old stuff, but it's definitely good enough. That is exactly how this film is. It is good enough. You're going to have some laughs, you're going to enjoy some moments, but it just does not ever hit the heights of the original film. So let's get this started, shall we? We're going to get things started with negatives, then move into the positives to end the video on the ever so important high note. One of the things that stood out to me in this film was just kind of how the movie was presented. Now, in the original film, you're following around Spinal Tap on a tour. You get to see them up on stage, performing in front of live audiences, and there's a lot of movement in the film. You're going to different locations, and you're traveling around with a band, and there's all sorts of drama and fun stuff that happens, lots of antics and stuff on the way. This movie isn't really formed that way. It's more formed in the let's get the band back together and sit around and rehearse kind of way. So for pretty much the entire movie, you are in a studio recording practice session with Spinal Tap. And as they're sitting there practicing their songs, other members, like some other big names in the music industry, show up. There's a lot of really good cameos that are a lot of fun, and it's great to see these, you know, these different musicians and all, but it just kind of felt like it was just like, hey, look at this guy. Here he is. Let's see what they're gonna do with this song. Hey, look, Paul McCartney, kids. Remember Paul McCartney? He was one of them Beatles. Now he's with Spinal Tap. He's playing songs with Spinal Tap. Hey, look, it's Elton John. And I guess, in all honesty, I really did not enjoy the cameos because it just felt really odd because they just would show up at the studio practice sessions or whatever they were doing. So they would just walk in and be like, oh yeah, I really love that song. That song's great. And then they would sing a song together and that celebrity would move on. Rob Reiner would ask him a few questions, blah, blah, blah. And it would keep with that whole format of the mockumentary. The mockumentary format does pretty well stick with this film. There are some moments where I felt like they were getting into the more of a scripted film, and that's kind of how these movies work too with these mockumentaries. There is no real script. Everything is real free-flowing, and that's why those musicians' cameos are actually kind of fun because you get to find out the sense of humor of these folks, and let's just say Paul McCartney actually has an excellent sense of humor. He was really funny in this movie. But it got a little bit like, okay, can we please move on to what's going? So most of this film is just building up to their big show, their big final performance as Spinal Tap. Rather than following them on tour, we're just following them in a very small scale type of thing, going for one show. And while there's some great moments that really work, most of the physical comedy that was in the first movie is pretty much null and void. Now, I do understand that our Spinal Tap has gotten older over the years, but not having some of those great fun moments that were on stage, like the pods closing and opening and so on and so forth. A lot of those great moments on stage just were not in this movie. It's just them hanging out, sitting around, singing songs and talking, and then doing interviews and so on. And there are some really, really funny moments in that, but not necessarily to the level of the first film. There's also a moment where they try to recreate the It Goes to 11 scene, but this time they're using different types of guitar pedals, and while it wasn't necessarily unentertaining, it really didn't get to the levels of the It Goes to 11 punchline. It just didn't have that weird, awkward silence. It just kind of seemed like some, yay, this one makes a funny sound. Oh, we want to hear something even funnier? This one makes a funny sound too, and it looks like a pizza. And it's like, okay, that's funny, sure, but it doesn't hold a candle to that whole It Goes to 11. It was such an extremely great moment, and it just never quite did it in this film. So all in all, guys, I would say that those were the things that really bothered me about the movie the most. It was not necessarily the same type of format. I would have rather been able to follow them along on tour for their final tour rather than just their final show. And then it just kind of seemed like an MTV Unplugged for a good 45 minutes of the movie. Now, there is some great funny moments that are in there, some really witty type of humor and all, but if you're someone who really likes that physical comedy from the first film, it's really not in this movie. But there is a lot of stuff that I did enjoy about this film, so let's get into those positives. And the first thing I want to talk about is just our cast. These guys just popped back into these characters after 41 years of them sitting on the shelf, and you would not have known it. The whole mockumentary flow of this film was dead on. There are some moments where it kind of breaks away and it feels more like a scripted movie, but all in all of those moments, the unscripted moments, are definitely fun and really great. They don't necessarily beat your head over with nostalgia in this film either. That was something that I really appreciated. This film is really trying to be its own thing. The first movie was kind of a, this is the music industry and this is what it's like to be on tour, and in this one it's, this is what happens when the tour's over and everyone is 70 years old. And I like the way that this film really sets itself aside. Yes, there are moments that they call back to some other jokes. I mean, you can't let a joke as good as the Stonehenge joke not pop back up at least to be mentioned a little bit. And of course, like I was saying, they try to recreate the It Goes to 11 scene. Even though it doesn't necessarily land perfectly, it still was a lot of fun in those moments. So the film itself, actually, it's not the greatest comedy in the world. It does have some really great moments, and to be perfectly honest, I feel like this movie would have been a lot better received if it was a streaming film, to be perfectly honest. I just don't think that this movie is going to pack the seats that it's hoping for. I went to the early show, and I was in the IMAX theater, and it looked very vacant in there. Let me just put it to you that way. And that's, of course, nothing at all to say about the quality of the film. I just think that this is a movie that none of us ever saw a sequel coming to. As I keep bringing up, 41 years ago. 41 years ago, that's when the original film came out. And to be perfectly honest, with as fresh and new and unique as this movie does feel, I gotta say that they did an excellent job. But when you set it next to that original film, it just doesn't hold a candle. It's still a perfectly funny film, and I think that when people sit down and watch it, they are going to enjoy it. But I do feel, just like the original movie, this is going to be a cult classic. This one's going to end up on streaming services, and it's going to probably be #1 for weeks on end. But then again, what do I know, right? I'm just a guy who really enjoys watching movies. But my honest opinion about this film is, unless you are an absolute super fan of Spinal Tap and you want to see this film, definitely go out to the theaters and see this movie, because you're going to enjoy it. If you saw the first film and you're like, yeah, that was funny, just wait for it on streaming. Don't bother going out and seeing this movie in theaters. It's not a terrible film. It's just that I feel like you're going to not get as much of enjoyment out of this movie when you see it in the theater. Well, okay, guys, that's all I have for you today. Let me say that differently. Not that that it's in a theater. It's just that, is it worth your $15 to $20 to see this film? In all honesty, I would have to say no, but it is definitely worth a watch because it's a good time. Well, that's all I have for you today, guys. Thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.